My friend stole my fortune when I was sick, so I unleashed my ultimate cold revenge. He remembered the exact moment Silas Croft thought he had won. It wasn't a quiet, private triumph. Silas was never one for understated victories. No, it was a grand, ostentatious affair, a lavish charity gala held in the grand ballroom of the city's most exclusive hotel. This was an event he had often contributed to, an evening that now, ironically, derived its opulent funding from the very fortune Silas had stolen from him. The air was thick with the cloying scent of expensive perfume and the murmur of sycophantic praise. Crystal chandeliers, heavy with 1,000 facets, cast a golden glow that seemed to amplify Silas's smug satisfaction. As Silas, resplendent in a custom-tailored suit of midnight blue, ascended the stage to deliver a speech, a faint, almost imperceptible tremor passed through Kaelen's weary frame. Silas beamed, his eyes sweeping over the crowd, basking in their admiration, a man utterly convinced of his own invincibility. "We stand here tonight," Silas declared, his voice echoing through the opulent hall, a voice Kaelen had once trusted implicitly, a voice now laced with the poison of deceit. "Celebrating not just generosity, but resilience. We've all faced challenges, unexpected downturns. But through astute leadership and unwavering dedication, we emerge stronger." His gaze, for a fleeting moment, met Kaelen's across the room. There was a flicker of something in his eyes, pity? Contempt? Perhaps a twisted, almost sadistic sense of triumph. He knew Kaelen was there, a ghost at his feast, a silent testament to his perceived conquest. He saw Kaelen Vance, the man who had once been at the pinnacle of the health tech world, now seemingly reduced to a mere spectator, a pale shadow of his former self. Kaelen could almost hear the triumphant drumbeat in Silas's mind, a celebration of what he thought was Kaelen's final, irreversible defeat. The audience, oblivious to the insidious narrative Silas was weaving, applauded. They saw Silas, the benevolent patron, the shrewd businessman who had stepped up in Kaelen's absence. They saw him as the savior of Valiant Health, the company Kaelen had poured his lifeblood into, the company Silas had systematically cannibalized. Kaelen observed their faces, a mixture of genuine admiration and superficial social courtesy. Many of them were former colleagues, investors, or even competitors who now regarded him with a polite, almost dismissive sympathy. Silas paused, letting the applause swell, before continuing, "His dear friend, Kaelen, is, as they knew, still recovering from a most unfortunate illness. His vision, while once bright, has dimmed. It falls to those of us who remain clear-sighted to carry the torch forward." A wave of sympathetic murmurs rippled through the room. Kaelen felt the glances, heavy with a mixture of pity and polite curiosity. They saw a man still gaunt from months of illness, moving with a subtle stiffness that spoke of a body still mending, a body that still carried the echoes of excruciating pain. They saw the face of someone who had lost everything. His tailored suit, once a symbol of his professional success, now hung a little too loosely on his frame, a stark visual reminder of the physical toll. But what they didn't see, what Silas couldn't even begin to comprehend, was the cold, unyielding resolve that burned within him. They couldn't see the gears turning in his mind, the intricate layers of a plan that had been meticulously constructed over agonizing months, each detail sharpened by the bitter taste of betrayal. Silas descended the stage, moving through the crowd like a king among his subjects. He approached Kaelen, a practiced smile plastered on his face, a mask of false concern. "Kaelen, his friend," Silas said, his voice a smooth purr. He was so glad Kaelen could make it. Kaelen was looking better. His eyes, however, held no warmth. They scanned Kaelen, searching, Silas presumed, for any sign of lingering weakness, any confirmation of his victory. Kaelen registered the slight tightening around Silas's eyes, the almost imperceptible smirk that flitted across his lips. Silas truly believed he was invincible. "He was recovering, Silas," Kaelen replied, his voice steady, betraying none of the seething undercurrents Silas expected. "Remarkably well, in fact." He allowed a faint, almost imperceptible smile to touch his lips. It's truly inspiring to see how Valiant Health has continued to thrive under Silas's guidance. The word guidance hung in the air, weighted with an irony only Kaelen could perceive. Silas merely chuckled, a self-satisfied sound that grated on Kaelen's ears. Some of us are simply built for leadership, Kaelen, Silas boasted, subtly puffing out his chest. Even in the direst of circumstances, one must adapt, innovate. It's a cruel world out there, his friend. Only the strong survive. He raised his champagne flute, a silent toast to his own perceived strength, to the empire he believed he had rightfully seized. He believed he had dismantled Kaelen's empire, picked apart his fortune piece by piece, and left him utterly destitute. He believed Kaelen was a broken man, incapable of fighting back, blinded by his former loyalty and weakened by his illness. Silas Croft, a predator in a tailored suit, stood completely unaware of the precise, calculated force that was about to descend upon him. What Silas didn't know, what no one knew, was the one thing Kaelen had guarded more fiercely than his fortune, more closely than his life itself. It wasn't a physical asset, nor a hidden vault of cash. It was a truth, a mechanism, a cold, unyielding system Kaelen had put in place long before he ever fell ill. Silas was celebrating on quicksand, and Kaelen was merely waiting for the tide to come in. The real game, the true contest of wills, had only just begun. The curtain had just risen on Silas Croft's very public downfall, and he was too arrogant, too blind, to see it. To understand the meticulous precision of Kaelen's revenge, one must first comprehend the depth of the betrayal that necessitated it. His journey began not in the halls of power, but in the quiet solitude of his own mind. From a young age, he harbored an insatiable curiosity about how things worked, not just machines, but systems, people, and the intricate dance of human interaction. He would spend hours dissecting old electronics, not just to fix them, but to understand the logic of their circuits. This fascination, coupled with an unwavering drive, led him to found Valiant Health at the age of 28. It wasn't just a business, it was a mission. He envisioned a world where healthcare was truly accessible, intuitive, and empowering, a vision born from seeing his own grandmother struggle with navigating a complex, impersonal medical system. He poured every ounce of his being into Valiant Health. His days blurred into nights, fueled by ambition and an almost fanatical dedication. He sacrificed personal relationships, leisure, even his health, for the dream. He remembered countless nights working until dawn, fueled by cold coffee and the sheer exhilaration of creating something truly impactful. They developed groundbreaking AI diagnostics that could detect diseases years earlier than traditional methods, intuitive patient management platforms that streamlined care, and telemedicine solutions that genuinely changed lives for millions in remote areas. The company grew exponentially, attracting top talent and significant investment from venture capitalists who believed in his audacious vision. His net worth soared, but for him, it was always a byproduct, never the primary goal. The true reward was seeing their technology make a tangible difference in people's lives. Silas Croft had been his friend since childhood. They grew up in the same quiet suburban neighborhood, shared scraped knees and whispered secrets in treehouses, and weathered the awkwardness of adolescence together. Silas was charismatic, quick-witted, and possessed a superficial charm that masked a deeper insecurity, a constant need for external validation. When Valiant Health started to take off, Kaelen, out of a misguided sense of loyalty and a belief in second chances for an old friend who seemed to drift without purpose, offered Silas a position. Silas wasn't a tech expert, nor a business strategist, but he was a smooth talker, excellent at networking and client relations, a master of schmoozing. Kaelen saw it as an opportunity to help an old friend, to share his success, to finally give Silas a stable, meaningful role. In hindsight, it was the first, most critical error in a series of misjudgments, a decision blinded by nostalgia and an overabundance of trust. He overlooked the subtle signs, Silas's penchant for extravagant purchases that seemed beyond his salary, the occasional vague excuses for missing deadlines, the casual way he dropped Kaelen's name in conversations to impress others. Kaelen rationalized it as youthful exuberance, a friend finding his footing, a minor character flaw. He remembered one instance where Silas took credit for a major client deal that Kaelen had painstakingly closed after months of negotiation, shrugging it off as just a bit of bravado. Kaelen's loyalty, once a strength, became his greatest vulnerability. He trusted Silas implicitly, especially when it came to the more public-facing aspects of the company, believing his charismatic facade was a genuine reflection of his character. He even granted him broad access to their financial systems, under the guise of oversight and strategic partnership, a privilege he never extended to anyone else, not even his CFO. It was a fatal oversight, born of blind trust and a deep-seated belief in the unbreakable bond of their shared past. Then, the illness struck. It began subtly, a persistent fatigue that he initially attributed to long work hours. Then came unexplained fevers, followed by neurological symptoms that rapidly escalated: tremors, slurred speech, profound disorientation. Within weeks, he was diagnosed with a rare, aggressive autoimmune disorder that attacked his central nervous system. The prognosis was grim. The doctors spoke in hushed tones of irreversible damage, of uncertain outcomes. He entered a coma-like state, a twilight world where time lost all meaning, where sensations were dulled to distant echoes, and the only constant was a pervasive sense of helplessness. Before he lost consciousness completely, in a haze of pain and fear, he made the gravest mistake of all. With no immediate family nearby, and believing Silas to be his most trusted confidant, the only person who truly understood his vision, Kaelen granted him temporary power of attorney. This legal document gave Silas full control over his personal and corporate assets, with the explicit directive to manage his affairs and ensure his medical care. He remembered Silas's solemn promise to protect his legacy, his hand clasped firmly over Kaelen's own, a performance worthy of an Oscar, chilling in its calculated deceit. Months later, he awoke. The world returned to him in disjointed fragments: the sterile white of a hospital room, the quiet hum of medical machinery, the faint scent of antiseptic. His body was a ghost of its former self, muscles atrophied, voice a rasp, his movements stiff and uncoordinated. The nurses moved around him with practiced gentleness, their faces reflecting a quiet pity. But his mind, though sluggish at first, slowly began to reassemble itself, and with it, the cold, hard clarity of memory. It started with simple questions, whispered painfully: where are his personal funds for recovery? What is the status of Valiant Health? The answers, when they came, were a slow, agonizing unraveling. His personal accounts were almost empty, drained of millions. His investment portfolios, once robust, diversified across global markets, had been systematically liquidated. The shares he held in Valiant Health, the majority stake that represented his life's work, had been sold off, piece by piece, at opportune moments that reeked of calculated malice, often at prices far below market value. Silas, his childhood friend, the man he had entrusted with his very life, had not just misused the power of attorney, he had weaponized it. He had siphoned Kaelen's entire fortune, funneled it through a labyrinth of shell companies registered in obscure island nations, and systematically stripped him bare. Valiant Health itself, while still operational, was a hollowed-out shell, its core assets plundered, its intellectual property jeopardized, its future hanging by a thread. Kaelen was financially ruined, utterly destitute, a man who had gone from visionary entrepreneur to pauper in the blink of an illness. The initial shock was profound, a physical blow that left him gasping for air, despite the tubes that helped him breathe. Despair, a black, suffocating cloak, threatened to engulf him entirely. But it did not. Instead, a different emotion took root, a cold, clinical rage. It wasn't the fiery, impulsive anger that blinds, the kind that leads to reckless action. This was a chilling, steady burn that sharpened his focus, stripping away all sentimentality and leaving only a clear, precise objective. Silas had underestimated him. He had seen Kaelen's illness as an opportunity, his loyalty as a weakness. He had believed that in his weakened state, Kaelen would be too broken, too defeated, to fight back. Silas was profoundly, irrevocably wrong. Even before the illness, Kaelen's meticulous nature extended beyond business. He was a firm believer in redundancy, in secure digital architecture, in having fail-safes for every conceivable scenario. As a tech entrepreneur, he understood the fragility of digital security, the necessity of independent verification. Years prior, long before he ever dreamed of such a betrayal, spurred by a sophisticated cyber attack on a competitor's financial systems, he had developed something he called the Sentinel Protocol. It was an independent, highly encrypted, distributed ledger system, akin to a private, impenetrable blockchain, designed to mirror and cross-reference all significant financial transactions related to his personal wealth and valiant health. It operated silently in the background, a digital shadow of his financial life, beyond the reach of standard audits or the prying eyes of even trusted employees. He had initially built it as an ultimate safeguard against sophisticated cyber attacks or internal fraud, a dead man's switch of sorts that would trigger if certain anomalous activities were detected or if he, the primary operator, failed to engage with it for an extended period. The system was designed to independently verify every incoming and outgoing fund, every share transfer, every asset revaluation, stamping each entry with an immutable timestamp and cryptographic hash. It was a testament to his innate caution, a silent witness to every transaction, every movement of capital. He had designed it to be impenetrable, self-executing, and ultimately, irrefutable. It was his secret weapon, forged not for revenge, but for protection, yet now, it would become the instrument of Silas Croft's undoing. He had unknowingly built the very mechanism that would expose Silas's every lie, his every theft, and secure Kaelen's ultimate, cold revenge. His recovery was a slow, arduous climb back from the brink, but every physical therapy session, every small victory against the lingering effects of his illness, was fueled by an unwavering resolve. He was weak, yes, but his mind, thankfully, was as sharp as ever, perhaps even sharper, honed by the crucible of betrayal. He began his meticulous work from the confines of his hospital bed, then later, from a small, rented apartment. Silas had, of course, sold his house along with everything else. The modest apartment, sparsely furnished, was a stark contrast to the sprawling penthouse he once called home, but it offered the quiet solitude his mind craved. The first step was to access the Sentinel Protocol. It was a system he had designed to be accessible only to him, through a series of complex biometric and multi-factor authentications that even a coma could not bypass, precisely because it required his active input. Once he regained enough dexterity to operate a tablet, his fingers trembling initially, he initiated the primary sequence. The data streamed in, a chillingly precise digital ledger of Silas's treachery. Every illicit transaction, every company share sold, every investment liquidated, every transfer to Silas's labyrinthine network of offshore accounts and shell corporations, it was all there, time-stamped, cross-referenced, and utterly undeniable. The Sentinel Protocol had diligently recorded it all, a silent, unblinking witness to Silas's every move, a digital diary of his descent into criminality. He spent weeks immersed in this data, not out of emotional despair, but with the detached, analytical focus of a surgeon. He mapped Silas's financial movements, identifying the recipients of his ill-gotten gains, the lawyers and accountants who had, wittingly or unwittingly, facilitated his schemes. He saw how Silas had used his medical condition as leverage, how he had manipulated board members with tales of Kaelen's incapacity and impending demise, painting himself as the sole stable hand to guide valiant health through a crisis. He discovered that Silas had even used a portion of the stolen funds to buy a lavish penthouse, ironically just a few blocks from where Kaelen now lived in his rented solitude. His public persona during this period was crucial. He cultivated an image of a man broken, but resigned. He appeared gaunt, quiet, and seemingly focused only on his physical recovery. When old colleagues or investors visited, their faces a mixture of concern and morbid curiosity, he would speak softly, expressing gratitude for their concern, vaguely lamenting his lost fortune with a sigh, implying that he simply didn't have the fight left in him. "It's all gone," he would murmur, shaking his head. "Silas has done what he thinks is best," he supposed. He was just grateful to be alive. This passive resignation was a calculated performance, designed to lull Silas into a false sense of security, to make him utterly convinced that Kaelen was no threat. Silas needed to believe he had won definitively, that his victory was absolute. And he did. He reveled in it, growing bolder with each passing week. He began to flaunt his newfound wealth, purchasing luxury cars, throwing extravagant parties, and making significant, highly publicized donations to various charities, all, of course, funded by Kaelen's stolen assets. He even started dating a prominent socialite, ensuring his face was regularly splashed across society pages, basking in the public eye. He was, in his own mind, untouchable. While Silas paraded his stolen success, Kaelen was quietly laying the groundwork for his undoing. He started by meticulously vetting a small, highly specialized team of legal and forensic accounting experts, individuals known for their discretion and their unwavering commitment to justice, people he could trust, people who operated outside the traditional networks Silas might have compromised. He approached them through intermediaries, providing only fragments of information at first, enough to pique their interest, but not enough to reveal his full hand. He spoke of a complex case of corporate malfeasance, a challenging legal puzzle involving obscure offshore accounts. Only after they agreed to take on the case, under strict non-disclosure agreements, did he begin to unveil the full scope of Silas's betrayal, piece by agonizing piece, supported by the irrefutable data from the Sentinel Protocol. The meticulous nature of the data, its self-verifying structure, stunned even these seasoned professionals. He also began to reactivate his old network, not overtly, but subtly. He would reach out to former Valiant Health board members like Eleanor Vance, no relation, but a respected industry veteran, key investors like the formidable Mr. Chen, and even high-ranking government regulators he had worked with on healthcare policy. His conversations were always light, ostensibly about his recovery, but he would plant tiny seeds of doubt, innocuous questions about the company's recent strategic shifts or Silas's sudden change in lifestyle. He seems to have adapted rather quickly to the helm, doesn't he? Kaelen might say to Eleanor, with a faint, knowing smile. Almost as if he was always meant for it. These were subtle nudges, designed to make them question, to observe Silas more closely, to cultivate a quiet skepticism that would blossom into full-blown suspicion once the truth was revealed. He spent countless hours preparing his case, cross-referencing every data point, building a narrative that was not just legally sound, but irrefutable. He learned the intricacies of international finance law, the specific statutes governing power of attorney, and the loopholes Silas had exploited. He became an expert in Silas's fraud, understanding his every move, anticipating his every counterargument. He meticulously rehearsed the presentation of the Sentinel Protocol, ensuring its undeniable clarity. His strategy was not to react to Silas, but to dictate the terms of his downfall. Silas believed he had written the final chapter of Kaelen's story. Silas was merely a character in the grand finale of his own. The silence from Kaelen, which Silas interpreted as defeat, was in fact the calm before the storm. Kaelen was not just planning, he was weaving a trap, thread by invisible thread, and Silas, blinded by his arrogance, was walking directly into its center. The climax arrived, as meticulously planned, at the annual shareholders' meeting of Valiant Health. Silas, of course, had orchestrated the event to be a coronation, a public affirmation of his leadership. He had strategically restructured the board, brought in new investors loyal to him, and was preparing to announce a major acquisition, one, Kaelen knew, that was designed to further entrench Silas's control and obscure the true financial state of the company. The meeting was held in the company's flagship auditorium, packed with shareholders, eager analysts, influential board members, and, significantly, a few prominent journalists whom Silas had invited, eager to capture his triumph and solidify his image as a visionary leader. Kaelen arrived precisely at the appointed time, walking slowly, deliberately, down the central aisle. The murmurs began immediately, a ripple of surprise, then confusion, as his gaunt figure emerged from the back of the room. Heads turned, whispers spread, and a palpable tension filled the air. Silas, already at the podium, mid-sentence, faltered. His eyes, for the first time since Kaelen's recovery, held a flicker of genuine unease, a fleeting crack in his polished facade. He quickly regained his composure, however, offering a tight, patronizing smile. "Kaelen," he said, his voice surprisingly steady, though Kaelen detected a subtle edge of panic, a pleasure to see him. They were just discussing the bright future of Valiant Health. Kaelen reached the front row, taking his seat directly across from Silas, his gaze unwavering, a silent challenge. "Indeed, Silas," he replied, his voice carrying clearly in the hushed room, each word resonating with quiet authority, "a future that should be built on transparency, not deceit." A collective gasp swept through the room. Silas's face hardened, his smile vanishing, a vein throbbing faintly in his temple. Kaelen had had quite enough of the spotlight, Silas hissed, his tone venomous, though still low enough to avoid the microphones nearest the podium. Perhaps Kaelen should sit quietly and observe. "On the contrary, Silas," Kaelen said, rising slowly to his feet, his movements deliberate, powerful, no longer stiff with illness. His eyes swept over the shocked faces in the room, making eye contact with key board members, with the journalists who had now sharpened their focus on him, sensing a monumental shift. He believed it was time for the true spotlight to shine. Not on the future Silas envisioned, but on the past Silas meticulously orchestrated. A tense silence descended, broken only by the rapid click of camera shutters and the excited murmurs of the journalists. Silas, sensing the complete shift in the room's energy, gripped the podium, his knuckles white, his composure rapidly disintegrating. "Security," he bellowed, his voice losing its cultivated smoothness, a raw flicker of panic in his eyes. "Remove him." Before the bewildered security could even react, Kaelen pulled a small, sleek tablet from his jacket. "There's no need for that," he said, his voice calm, almost meditative, cutting through Silas's desperate shout. "The truth needs no escort. It merely needs to be revealed." He tapped a few commands on the tablet. On the massive projection screen behind Silas, which had moments before displayed Valiant Health's glossy growth charts, a new image flickered to life. It was a complex, interactive dashboard, a dizzying array of interconnected financial data points, transaction histories, and encrypted ledger entries. It was the visual manifestation of the Sentinel Protocol, its clean, undeniable lines a stark contrast to Silas's unraveling facade. For months, Kaelen began, his voice gaining strength, resonating through the auditorium. Silas Croft operated under the guise of temporary power of attorney, entrusted with managing his affairs during his illness. What he did, however, was not management. It was methodical, systematic plunder. He gestured to the screen. Every transaction they saw here, gentlemen and ladies, was a verifiable record. The Sentinel Protocol, a system he designed years ago for ultimate financial transparency and security, tracked every penny, every share, every illicit transfer, every whispered instruction. Silas watched, his face a mask of dawning horror. He lunged forward, as if to rip the tablet from Kaelen's hands, but he was too slow, too disoriented by the shocking display. "Let's start with the liquidation of his personal investment portfolios," Kaelen continued, navigating the interface with practiced ease, his fingers dancing across the screen. On the screen, a precise timeline appeared, showing exact dates, amounts, and the receiving accounts, all linked directly to shell companies registered in anonymous offshore jurisdictions, companies that, with a single tap, revealed Silas Croft as the ultimate beneficial owner. Here, they saw the systematic dismantling of decades of careful investment, funneled directly into accounts controlled by Mr. Croft, often within hours of the sales. A murmur, louder this time, swept through the room. Board members exchanged stunned glances, their faces etched with dawning comprehension. The journalists were frantically typing notes, their cameras clicking incessantly. Next, Kaelen pressed on, his voice unwavering, the company shares. He brought up another section of the dashboard. Silas Croft did not just manage Valiant Health, he bled it dry. Under the pretext of strategic divestment and crisis management, he sold off Kaelen's majority shares, not to bolster company reserves, but to enrich himself. Here were the sales records, he highlighted a series of transactions, and here, he tapped again, revealing more intricate connections, were the exact sums, the precise dates, and the final destinations of those funds, again, flowing back to Mr. Croft's personal and interconnected corporate entities, often through multiple layers of transfers designed to obscure their origin. The room erupted in gasps. Silas, pale and sweating, stammered, these were fabrications. Lies. He's delusional from his illness. His voice was ragged, desperate. Kaelen met Silas's desperate gaze, a chilling calm in his eyes. Was he, Silas? Kaelen countered, his voice dripping with icy control. Because unlike Silas's meticulously falsified quarterly reports, this data was immutable. It stored on a distributed ledger, encrypted, and independently verifiable by any forensic accountant in this room. Every entry was cross-referenced with public financial records and bank statements that Kaelen's team had already obtained. He paused, allowing the crushing weight of his words to sink in, allowing the truth to settle. Furthermore, his legal team had already provided the relevant authorities with a complete, certified copy of this data, along with supporting documentation, bank statements, forged transfer authorizations, and emails where Silas explicitly instructed his co-conspirators to conceal these transactions, often using coded language. He then displayed a series of emails, enlarged on the screen, revealing Silas's direct instructions to his accomplices, outlining the scheme in stark, incriminating detail, complete with timestamps and IP addresses. Silas's face crumpled. The bravado, the arrogance, all melted away, replaced by raw, unadulterated fear. The room was no longer filled with shocked whispers, but with a rising tide of outrage, a collective sense of profound violation. This was not just theft, ladies and gentlemen, Kaelen concluded, his voice resonating with quiet power, a final, devastating blow. This was a calculated act of betrayal, an abuse of trust, perpetrated by a man he called his friend, a man who saw his vulnerability as an opportunity to destroy his life's work for his own insatiable greed. He looked directly at Silas, who stood frozen, utterly exposed, his world crumbling around him. The game is over, Silas. And Silas, his friend, had lost everything. The silence that followed was deafening, the only sound the furious click of cameras, capturing the raw, unvarnished truth of a man's ruin. The immediate aftermath of that revelation at the shareholders' meeting was a maelstrom of chaos and incredulity. Silas Croft, stripped of his carefully constructed facade, stood trembling on the stage, his face contorted in a mixture of disbelief and sheer terror. The security guards, who moments before had been poised to remove Kaelen, now looked at Silas with a dawning horror. It was as if a spell had been broken, revealing the monster beneath the charming veneer. "Arrest him," shouted one of the board members, Eleanor Vance, her face purple with rage, her voice ringing with betrayal. "He's a thief. A swindler." Within minutes, uniformed officers, who Kaelen had discreetly arranged to be on standby outside the building, entered the auditorium. They moved swiftly, purposefully, towards the stage. Silas, still dazed, offered no resistance. He merely stared at Kaelen, his eyes wide, hollow, as if trying to comprehend the sheer scale of his miscalculation, the intricate trap that had just sprung shut. As the handcuffs clicked into place, a faint metallic sound that echoed in the stunned silence, Silas muttered, "Kaelen, how?" But Kaelen offered him no explanation, no satisfaction. His gaze was cold, unyielding. Justice, unburdened by emotion, was already at work. The journalists, sensing the story of a lifetime, swarmed forward, their microphones thrust towards Silas, towards the board members, towards Kaelen. The questions flew thick and fast. "Mr. Vance, how did he uncover this? Was anyone else involved? What did this mean for Valiant Health?" Kaelen offered only a brief, composed statement, "The evidence speaks for itself." His priority now was to ensure full transparency and to rebuild Valiant Health for its true purpose, advancing healthcare, ethically and with integrity. The fallout was swift and devastating for Silas. The news exploded across every major financial and news outlet within hours. Tech mogul's friend betrays him in multi-million-dollar fraud, power of attorney abused, Silas Croft exposed, Sentinel Protocol unveils financial treachery. His carefully cultivated public image shattered into a million pieces. His philanthropic endeavors, once lauded, were revealed as thinly veiled money laundering schemes. His lavish lifestyle, once admired as a mark of success, became a symbol of his criminal greed, a vulgar display of stolen wealth. The legal proceedings were remarkably efficient, almost clinical. The evidence provided by the Sentinel Protocol was irrefutable. It was a digital fingerprint of every fraudulent transaction, every deceitful maneuver, every lie etched in code. Kaelen's legal team, armed with this meticulously gathered data, presented a case so airtight that Silas's defense quickly crumbled under the weight of undeniable truth. His co-conspirators, facing their own impending ruin, began to cooperate with the prosecution, offering further incriminating testimony in exchange for leniency. The intricate web of deceit Silas had woven was now unraveling at an astonishing pace, trapping him in its sticky threads, leaving him utterly exposed. The reactions of others were varied and revealing. Many of the board members, who had dismissed Kaelen's subtle warnings during his recovery, were consumed by a mix of shock, regret, and profound embarrassment. They approached him, offering contrite apologies, expressing their profound sorrow for having been so easily manipulated. They should have seen it, Kaelen, Eleanor Vance confessed, her face etched with shame. They were blinded by his charm, and their own ambitions. Kaelen accepted their apologies with a quiet nod, offering no false comfort. Their complicity, however unwitting, had enabled Silas. Friends, even those who had subtly distanced themselves when Kaelen's fortunes seemingly vanished, now reappeared, expressing their outrage at Silas's betrayal and their admiration for Kaelen's resilience. Some, genuine in their concern, had reached out during his darkest days, sending small, thoughtful gifts or simply offering a listening ear, and it was to these few that Kaelen offered true warmth. Others, clearly motivated by opportunism, now eager to reattach themselves to a rising star, were met with a polite but firm distance. Kaelen learned, in the crucible of betrayal, to discern true loyalty from superficial allegiance. Silas's family, those who had benefited from his stolen wealth and enjoyed his ostentatious displays, were left in disgrace, their names forever tarnished. His socialite girlfriend publicly disavowed him, citing irreconcilable differences and moral outrage, a hollow performance that offered little comfort to Silas in his rapidly shrinking world. His name became synonymous with betrayal and corruption. He was truly alone, stripped of every shred of dignity, facing the full brunt of his choices. As for Kaelen, there was no triumphant gloating, no emotional catharsis in watching Silas fall. His satisfaction was a quiet, internal one, the deep resonance of justice served. It was the calm certainty that came from executing a complex plan with precision, from knowing that the truth, meticulously preserved, had finally prevailed. The financial recovery of his assets, though a complex legal process involving international asset tracing, had begun. Much of the stolen wealth was recoverable, thanks to the immutable records of the Sentinel Protocol and the swift action of the authorities. Valiant Health, though damaged, still possessed its core technology and its brilliant talent. It was bruised, but not broken. And Kaelen Vance was no longer a victim. He was the architect of his own vindication. Months turned into a year, and the dust began to settle. Silas Croft was convicted on multiple counts of fraud, embezzlement, and abuse of power. He received a lengthy prison sentence, a fate he now endures in a maximum security federal facility, his charisma utterly useless behind bars, his days filled with the harsh reality of his choices. His assets, those that could be traced, were seized and used for restitution. His name, once whispered in circles of power, is now only mentioned as a cautionary tale, a stark example of hubris and greed. Kaelen's life, too, had been irrevocably altered. The scars of illness and betrayal remain, subtle reminders of a painful past. But they are no longer wounds, they are badges of resilience, etched into his very being. He did not return to the day-to-day operations of Valiant Health with the same fervent, all-consuming ambition. The experience had taught him invaluable lessons about trust, about vigilance, and about the true meaning of success. He rebuilt Valiant Health, not just financially, but ethically. They implemented even more rigorous oversight protocols, emphasizing transparency at every level, ensuring no one person could ever again hold such unchecked power. He brought in a new CEO, a former competitor known for her unimpeachable integrity and quiet brilliance, and Kaelen took on a more strategic, advisory role, dedicating more time to mentoring young entrepreneurs and advocating for stronger ethical frameworks in the rapidly evolving tech industry. The company, under this renewed vision, is thriving, perhaps even more resilient and purpose-driven than before, a testament to his original, pure vision. His personal fortune, while not fully recovered to its pre-betrayal levels, is substantial once more, enough to ensure his comfort and to fund philanthropic endeavors close to his heart, particularly in supporting research for rare autoimmune diseases. But the money itself holds less significance now. True wealth, he has come to understand, is not merely financial. It is the peace of mind that comes from living with integrity, the strength found in overcoming adversity, and the profound knowledge that one's purpose extends beyond personal gain. He found a new sense of calm, a deeper appreciation for genuine connections, and a profound understanding of human nature's complexities. The meticulous planning that allowed him to build valiant health, and then to orchestrate Silas's downfall, is now channeled into more constructive avenues. He invests in technologies that genuinely serve humanity, and he dedicates significant time to educating others about digital security, financial safeguards, and the subtle signs of manipulation. He shares his story, not for sympathy, but as a testament to the power of resilience and the quiet strength of strategic foresight, hoping it might arm others against similar betrayals. Life, he has learned, is an unpredictable journey, filled with unforeseen challenges and profound betrayals. But it is also a canvas upon which one can paint a response. True strength isn't found in what one accumulates, but in what one can overcome. It's in the ability to face devastation, to analyze it, and to meticulously, patiently, rebuild. And sometimes, the coldest revenge, the most satisfying form of justice, is simply allowing the truth, systematically unveiled, to dismantle a lie, piece by calculated piece, ensuring that those who seek to destroy others ultimately destroy themselves. If you found Kaelen's story of resilience and meticulous planning compelling, be sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss similar narratives about triumph over adversity. What do you think was the most crucial decision Kaelen made in his path to vindication? And what lessons about trust and betrayal did you take away from his journey? Share your thoughts in the comments below.